In February of this year, Gartner came out with a new term. It's called the composable enterprise. It was in response to a trend they see happening in business today where everyone has to innovate faster. They have to respond more quickly to customer requirements and market conditions. And the existing enterprise application architecture, they don't believe, is going to be able to support this new direction, primarily because enterprise applications today are silos. And having to work between these silos is very inefficient and unproductive. So if you're a employee in an organization that has to context switch between lots of different applications during the day, Gartner doesn't believe that this is the way organizations are going to be competitive. So for example, if you take some of the reports that have been put together over the past year or so, anywhere between 10 to 100 applications are used every day by employees. And the net result is they spend between a half an hour to 90 minutes in this context switching mode, which obviously is not the best way to be efficient. Signal Pattern addresses this issue by taking all these application silos and disaggregating them into specific features that end users then can now interact with across all systems as if it was one system. And better than that, they can actually interact with these features through user interfaces that they already use. So if you take a sales scenario as an example, if you are a salesperson and you are arriving at a particular sales opportunity, chances are good you're going to want to get as much information about the customer as you can before you start the sales process. And maybe you're going to touch inventory systems, finance systems, warranty, purchase order information, and so on. And you may have to touch lots of different back ends to get a full 360-degree view of the customer. With Signal Pattern, all of these very specific functions and features that are existing across all these back-end systems now are available through one interface. And the interface that Signal Pattern provides is accessible through all the different user interface types that people are already familiar with. So if you are a Slack user, if you are somebody who really wants to get all the information they need from Slack, irrespective of what systems it's in, Signal Pattern supports that. Let's use the example of a salesperson who wants to get as much information about an account as they can, but they don't want to waste a lot of time sorting through a bunch of systems. Signal Pattern provides a search feature that allows a salesperson to literally come in this case, just enter the name of an account, in this case, Acme. What Signal Pattern provides is a real quick dashboard of information that is pertaining to Acme, and you'll see that it's coming from a number of different backends: Freshdesk for service tickets, company info for CRM, Salesforce.com, and so on. And you'll also notice that there's an opportunity here for a variable to be put in this case, it's a device ID. So if I put in device ID 400, this example would be sort of an Internet of Things example. So I'm looking to find out a status of a device, in this case, the location. So now here's my quick dashboard of all the information that we have about Acme. I can now use this information as it is. I can update the backend system. I can interrogate POs by clicking on the links here. But the other thing I can do is that if this is a dashboard view that I want to keep, I can now literally press the plus button up here and or just drag and drop these up here if I want. And now create a little dashboard of widgets, and I could save this, I could share it, and so on, and come back to this. So I always have that same view available to me. So that's nice. I could also now put in a different name. So let's say Crown is a customer. You'll see I get a different collection of information. You'll notice there's a lot more information here about the device. So maybe Crown has a more sophisticated device. What's interesting about Signal Pattern is that you can put parameters in the search query. So Crown is general, but if I put curly brace and I put in a device ID, say device ID equals 500, what I'm saying is to the search engine, go out, look at everything that's available for Crown, bring it back. But if there happens to be an API or a system that would take a parameter for ID, device ID, use that device ID when you come back with the information. So in this case, it's information about Crown, the customer, but also about this particular device. And again, maybe what I want to do is send this information to a service tech who's in the field, and rather than sending them a search query, I could just go and create a real fast dashboard for them. And by the way, these are all resizable. I can change how they look and so on. And this is a nice way to capture a piece of information, share it quickly. You'll notice that what I'm not doing is I'm not building an application. What I'm doing is I'm dynamically creating views of data. And it's not just read only. If you remember before, I can interact with information. So it's read only in some cases, but in other cases, I can literally come, if I want to say look up a device ID 1194, you'll notice I can take actions as well. So maybe in this case, I've noticed that the temperature is a little bit too high for this device. I can literally say suspend the device. And this is interacting with APIs, and I don't really necessarily have to know what system is doing it. I just know that as a person who's responsible for making it happen, I can do these things through this interface. And so signal pattern is very action-oriented versus data-oriented. And that's important consideration when you think about the differences between signal pattern and applications. Signal pattern is not an application builder. If we quickly go and look at how signal pattern works as an editor, I won't spend a lot of time here, but the idea would be you come into your homepage, your account homepage, and within these widgets, these are called patterns. And in here is where you literally go and you build the information, the calls to the APIs, the layouts, and so on using standard JavaScript, JSON, HTML, CSS, and so on. It's very simple. There is some coding knowledge required, but it's certainly not something which is beyond the scope of, say, somebody who is comfortable with, say, the technical sophistication of a spreadsheet or macros in spreadsheets. Another interesting feature of signal pattern is the ability to do mashups between APIs to create outcomes that are simple, but are actually built on multiple API calls that are dependent upon one another. So here's a good example. I want to have an interaction that would give me the ability to submit an image of a piece of food and have the dietary or the nutrition information come back about that item. So for example, here's one on the right hand side here, food nutrition data for one large item. I can say apple, and what it's doing is it's just going off to an API that will return nutrition data based on a search query. But there's some more sophisticated things that we can do. We did some work with a company called Clarify, and Clarify is an image recognition platform. And in this, what you can do is you can submit a photo of something. It'll come back with an identifier. And in this case, I'm going to go and look at the actual pattern as a whole. The idea here is that I want to be able to submit something, in this case, red, yellow, green, and you'll see what it is. It's a picture, but the idea is that there's no identifying information on the picture. So Clarify will look at it, identify it, and then we take that result, which is a food name, and feed it into the nutrition API to get the answer. So if I put in red thing, you'll see it's an apple. And what happens is Clarify identifies the picture, submits apple, and we get the outcome here. If I say green thing, it'll be an avocado, same thing. So this is an interesting example of a mashup between Clarify. It's actually more than that because there's a system which is holding the images. It's called Cloudinary, and that's an API call. So it pulls in the image. We then send it to Clarify to figure out what it is. We then take the output of that and feed it into the nutrition API, which is called Edamame, and we get the output. So it's a very simple answer. We're looking for this answer, but what's nice about signal pattern is it can stitch together the requirements to get there in a way that's easy to understand. And so if I were to show you the actual pattern, this is how complicated it is. It's very simple. You ask what you want, you get the answers, you send the output to another API, and so on. And so this is as complicated as it gets. And so that's why we consider signal pattern a low-code environment. It's not no-code, but it's low-code. And so the sophistication required to build these and share them is very low.